All right, we're good to go.
Yeah, we're live. We're live. I'm gonna send it out through the other channels as well.
Those on Instagram, welcome. I'm on with RotoWire teammate Alan Soslowski on the other feed, which is Twitter and YouTube. So if you hear any, I'll relay questions because you won't be able to hear Alan's questions, but we'll definitely get to that. This will work out very well, but welcome aboard. Alan, I'm going to retweet right now to get this thing going.
Oh no, I already handled all retweet. Unless you just retweet it from your account.
Yeah,
I've already done
account.
it from all the RotoWires. I've done it from mine. I'm going to do it from our friends at DFS Army are going to help us out today and allow a retweet. So we're going to do it all. We're going to do it all. Right. People have very important bets and DFS things they need to know. So everybody needs to know this valuable information today.
All right, so we are talking Conference Championship Sunday football. Again, those on Instagram, I'm going to relay questions that Alan Soslowski asked me on the Twitter YouTube stream to make sure this goes very well. Alan, any particular opening thoughts you want me to relay to their group at Instagram?
Tell them that they need to get on TikTok and stop this Instagram nonsense.
Alan says you need to get on TikTok and stop the Instagram nonsense, which means have both.
That's absolutely right. That's true. Just be everywhere. Hey, really quick today. Is there any weather issues in the Cincinnati Kansas City game? I know you're going to get into it, but I was just, what's the temperature going to be in that game?
Alan asked a great question about the weather for today's games, and beautiful 40 degrees in Kansas City, 5-mile-an-hour winds, no problem at all. And obviously in LA, we've got a dome, so it's going to be a perfect day for football. I mean, think about it. January football, late January. 40 degrees, mostly cloudy. And actually, we like mostly cloudy because we have no issues with the sun. Nobody's going to get blinded by something out of nowhere, like in Jerry World. Where you get the sun
I love that, by the way. I love that. I think they should beam headlights into the players' eyes as the punts are going up.
Yes.
It's freezing cold in Florida. Like, it's 32 degrees where I am. That's very unseasonal for Florida weather. And obviously, we know. So I thought maybe there was like a freeze going over. But yeah, you did the due diligence. Kansas City's going to be cold, but obviously great football weather. So, yeah, no, that's because I'm locking in some of my last minute stuff. I just wanted to make sure that was not a factor.
Yes. So now I'm going to go over a couple of game notes that people need to hear. And again, those on Instagram, when Alan asks a question, you're going to have a little bit of a gap. I want to relay it. These are important things. First of all, the Chiefs are -7. The line hasn't moved all week. More than Anthony, and 54.5 has been the total, and that really hasn't moved either. One thing I want you to know. A lot of people watched the Week 17 game or just saw the box score for the Week 17 game when the Bengals won 34-31 in Cincinnati. There are a number of reasons why I think we need to throw that game out in terms of switching it to this game. The first thing, pregame warmups, left tackle Orlando Brown injured his calf. They expected him to play. He was out. And then Lucas Niang, the right tackle, 6 offensive plays into the game, suffered a knee injury. So basically, the Chiefs played that game with 4 guards and a center. That was the first anomaly that didn't work. The second thing was Darrell Williams was the lead back. Now, at this point, Jerick McKinnon has seen 78 and 70% of the snaps the last 2 weeks. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is back in the mix. So that's another thing. Now, the biggest issue of it all, Kansas City had a massive outbreak of COVID over a few-week period. Travis Kelce and Rashad Fenton, who I believe is their top corner, both were activated off the COVID list just a couple days before that game. Don't think they were close to 100%. And then they had a number of players, including Tyreek Hill and Chris Jones and Charvarius Ward, who came back the prior week. But Tyreek Hill said how gassed he was from COVID. So I think they were in a bad way in terms of their entire team unit. Alan, before I move forward, any comments or questions you want me to relay over here?
Yeah, no. So would you agree now, these Chiefs, they've done enough over the last couple weeks to prove that these are the Chiefs we've known for the last 3 years?
Alan brings up a great question. So he tells us, is this now the Chiefs we've seen for the last few years? It's a great question because those who listen to a lot of what I said, look, there is no question that in the middle of this season, Patrick Mahomes was figured out. The cover 2 safeties high. He was still trying to push the ball downfield, and he kept looking and looking. When plays didn't develop, they were eating sacks. He was making bad throws. He was solved. And finally, over a period of time, a period of adjustments with Andy Reid, they finally got to a point where they said, okay, the way to beat the cover two, it's what Tom Brady did, it's what Aaron Rodgers did. You take what they give you. And what they give you is anything underneath. They've used the athleticism of Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce as a weapon underneath. They are now comfortable running 10-play drives, 12-play drives. They wanted it done in 4 or 5 plays. That is the biggest factor of how Kansas City is now back to the way they were. It's not the same. It's not the 5-play drives, but they are just as explosive. Anthony Mraz says Rodgers to the Niners. Would that be something? Alan, what other thoughts come to mind?
Yeah, when you were talking about, it's like Mahomes was almost playing like he doesn't like playing underneath. He likes that backyard football. So what I would relate to to answer my own question, it sounds like they're back. They're not just like, hey, we're going to throw down the field every time. We're going to matriculate the ball. Well, who was the coach? Was that Hank? What was his name?
Hank Stram.
We're going to matriculate the ball down the field.
Yeah, so Alan talks about the point where it's a different, like we said, offense. They are willing to be patient, and they scored over 40 points in each of the last 2 games. I know the last game went to overtime. There was a ton of scoring late, but understand, so for all these reasons, we are now that part was already a part of the Kansas City offense when they played in week 17. Matter of fact, after punting on the first drive of that game, the Chiefs scored 4 straight touchdowns. They had a big lead in that game. However, things flipped in the second half. Cincinnati controlled the clock. Andy Reid did what Andy Reid does, took his foot off the gas a bit, and all of a sudden the Chiefs found themselves in trouble. There's always a world where Andy Reid mismanages a lead, always in play and something to be concerned about. So that was the first point I want to make about the first game. Now, Bengals with the ball. That's where we're going next. Alan, I'll go through a couple points.
Wait,
now.
before, can this guy, Scott had a good question on the Chiefs side. He was talking about the workload split with Williams and McKinnon. He's forgetting one important piece of this running back committee.
Yes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Darrell Williams is out. In my opinion, he might get 3 snaps. Maybe. He's out. Edwards-Helaire, I mean, look, Darrell Williams put up numbers. Fantasy players like him for numbers. But he is not nearly the runner Clyde Edwards-Helaire is. He's nowhere in the stratosphere of Jerick McKinnon as a receiver. Darrell Williams, replacement level player in a good situation. And Alan, I'm glad you said that because I had the wrong screen on here, so I'm glad you pointed out.
Yeah, no, I'll take care of the questions. If any of them are passing through, you just do what you do best, Jim. Tell the people, break it down, and I'll feed you if there's any comments coming through.
So good. So we're moving to the Bengals side of the football here. And first of all, the Bengals throughout the stretch run of the season, they were running 76% 3 receiver sets. We call that 11 personnel. In the playoffs, they've upped it to over 90.
Wait, go back to that.
Yes.
You said that fast. I hear 11 personnel a lot, but just explain that a little further before you go into your point.
Yes. So as I said, they played 76% with 3 receivers on the field, which is 11 personnel.
Okay. Versus having 2 tight ends or something like that. Okay.
So the impact of having 3 receivers on the field is you force the defense to put an extra defensive back on the field. If you have 2 receivers on the field, basically you're going to see a front 7 and 4 defensive backs. If you put the extra receiver in, now you're going to see 5 defensive backs, maybe even 6, which you call dime defense. So good question, Alan. So now in the playoffs, they've ratcheted the use of 3 receivers almost full time, over 90% of the time. So that's very important to understand because that's how now the Kansas City Chiefs, by nature, they play nickel, 5 defensive backs. So their typical base, because they don't care if you run on them. They know they're going to outscore you if you go that route. So their 5 defensive backs are going to play right in to what the Bengals want to do. Does that make sense, Alan?
Yeah, but so how does the defense adjust? Do they see the players running in and out? So do they have a spotter saying, "Hey, there's 3 receivers coming on, send our nickel out," or whatever the counter is?
Alan asks how the defense would know that. And here's the point. So basically, the umpire has to spot the football. The umpire spots the football when play is ready, which means if the offense makes any substitution, the umpire holds the ball, waits, tells the defense, you're making substitutions. They're allowed to make substitutions. You can't just run guys on and off the field. The umpire has to approve it. And then the umpire has to allow the defense as much time as they need, not within the parameters of the play, to get the personnel on the field. So that's a great question, Alan. Now, in this game, it's very unlikely the Bengals are going to do anything other than the 3 receiver sets because, again, they're over 90% of that in the playoffs. Now, the Bengals, and that's why I think that let me back up just a second here. Their regular season numbers, you can't look at their full season numbers. The reason being two things. Joe Mixon was the engine of the offense for like 13 weeks of the season. They went through him. It was down the stretch that they decided that Burrow's knee was good enough to move in the pocket. And at that point, they became a pass-first team on the shoulders of Joe Burrow, which coincides with as many 3-receiver set as we've seen. That was a fundamental change in our offense. So we can only look at our current numbers, not our full season numbers. Alan, any points there?
Yeah. So when you're talking about the change in the offense, so you agree though that they have basically become a pass to set up the run, not a run to set up the pass. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Alan asks if they're now a pass to set up the run team. And I want you to know this. In the playoffs, 2 games, in neutral score situations, on early downs, Cincinnati's throwing the ball 61% of the time, which puts them only, based on regular season rates, puts them behind Kansas City and Buffalo. They now would be the 3rd highest pass rate team in the league. So the run, like Alan asked, is only to supplement the passing game. Early in the season, it was all Joe Mixon when he was dominating fantasy scores. So great question there. Now, we do worry about Joe Burrow here because you saw in last week's game when the Titans registered 9 sacks. Basically, the Bengals had their 5 linemen out, and they were not adding help at all. CJ Uzama was running routes. They were not giving any help, and they were completely overwhelmed. Well, if we think Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry on the outside are good, this week they're getting Chris Jones on the interior, who, my opinion, other than Aaron Donald, is the next best thing. Melvin Ingram on one outside, Frank Clark on the other. Frank Clark has not been good in most of his time with the Chiefs. He has ramped it up in the second half. He is playing at a high level right now. And Melvin Ingram was a great trade deadline acquisition from the Steelers. They are going to get pressure without blitzing, and I'll speak to more of that in a second. Alan, anything there?
Yeah. So I'm just curious though, the way you're describing this game, I'm curious who you're leaning towards against the spread here. I mean, you pointed out in the beginning that the line hasn't moved. The juice has moved a little bit, but why do you think that is your defensive versus offensive matchup? Can you rank all the units for me and then pick the game? I mean, like if you say the Kansas City offense is first, and then like if you're ranking all 4 units, how would you rank the units?
So Alan wants me to rank all 4 units within this game. And honestly, it's going to be Chiefs offense, Bengals offense. And at that point, I do have to say, not on this matchup alone, then Kansas City defense, then Cincinnati defense. If it's all things equal against all the teams in the league, the Cincinnati defense is better than the Chiefs defense. But overall, in this matchup, it would be the Kansas City defense because of the pressure they're going to be able to get. It's a great question. What else do you have, Alan?
Are either of these special teams special, or are they just kind of regular special teams? I mean, last week you saw a Buffalo do a suboptimal kick at the end of the game to avoid Tyreek Hill. So how would you rate the special teams in the rankings?
Alan asks about special teams here, and I don't see anything jump out for either team except for when they put Tyreek Hill on the field to return a punt. I had goosebumps last week. When you saw that punt, what Tyreek Hill did, he catches the ball near the right sideline. He made a couple quick steps into the left, stopped. Everybody was still going in that direction. He changed direction. He almost took it to the house. So I don't see an edge there. Now, a couple more things. Let's do. And I got to see questions. I will get to these questions, but we're going to break this thing down. So let's talk about Cincinnati side of the ball.
Keep going. There's plenty of time for questions. Just do it your pace. We'll add the questions at the end.
All right, sounds good.
And I'm answering them a little bit in the chat as we're going too. But they'll get your take after you're done breaking the game down.
Excellent. We have to talk about Ja'Marr Chase first. We know what Ja'Marr Chase is. He's a superstar. There's no question about it. I want to point this out. There are 2 divisional opponents, the Ravens and the Steelers, who he played twice. We throw out the Browns game because they played in Week 18 when the Bengals benched their starters. Here's what happened. First matchup against Baltimore. Ja'Marr Chase goes 8 catches, 201 yards, and a touchdown on 10 targets. In the rematch, same 10 targets, 7 catches for 125. Didn't score the touchdown. Had significantly less yardage, still very good. Pittsburgh game. First time he plays the Steelers. He gets 4 catches for 65 yards and 2 touchdowns in matchup number 1. The second matchup against the Steelers, 3 catches for 39. So we saw in the 2 games against the divisional opponents who game planned him for the second time, his production was significantly less. Now, he played against the Chiefs, and I have the numbers here. I have to look at those numbers were. He had a massive outbreak against the Chiefs. It was 266 yards and 3 touchdowns. I believe hey, Julia, I believe it's going to be the same thing here. The second matchup is going to be tough. Now, but here's another thing I want to add for people who are playing DFS. In those matchups where Chase was held down in the second matchup, T. Higgins went off. Second game against Baltimore, 12 catches, 194 and 2 touchdowns. Second game against Pittsburgh, 6 catches, 114 and a touchdown. So when the defense decided we have to take away Chase, and make no doubt about it, the Chiefs are going to come in with a too high shell specifically to stop Chase from big plays. Higgins is going to eat here. That's the biggest point. Now, people say the Raiders played him twice. In the Raiders, the first game, Chase only went 3 catches for 32 and a touchdown. The Raiders didn't have any reason to specifically game plan for him because he didn't torch them. He went 9 for 16 in that second game, 9 for 116 in that second game. But in the games where he did well, he was neutralized. Alan, comments?
Yeah, for the showdown slate, you hit on something really good. So when I was on the DraftKings stream this week, they'd asked me who I'd like to captain, and I was surprised. I thought everyone was going to say T. Higgins. I came to the same conclusion just by some basic clicking around. I mean, that's, you're smart to uncover it, but I like T. Higgins in the showdown as the captain spot because if you do that and you add C.J. Uzomah into your lineup, you can get both quarterbacks in your 5-person showdown slate.
So Alan is suggesting that T. Higgins, if you're playing the single slate DraftKings,
the showdown with the captain.
The showdown. T. Higgins in the captain spot and C.J. Uzomah, you put them in there, you can afford both quarterbacks, and that's a great strategy. We will get to questions. I want a couple more points on the Cincinnati offense. So now a weakness of the Chiefs defense is defending the running back as a receiver. In the last meeting, Joe Mixon caught 7 for 40. Joe Mixon is going to be used not only in that capacity to get him the ball there. In addition, when the pass rush is getting there quickly, he is going to be used as a dump off to try to get the ball in space to allow them to have some relief from the pressure. Joe Mixon, his prop has gone up for receiving yardage all week. It's not going to hit 40. He's very, very likely to surpass 40. It was like 30 and a half when I checked before. I got it at 27, I believe. But definitely Joe Mixon will be heavily used here. Alan, other thoughts?
No, you hit that right. The one Joe Mixon prop that I do like is most rushing yards in their game because, I mean, think about it. Who's he's going to have the most rushing yards on his team. And on the other side, it's going to be split a couple ways, and McKinnon's most likely to use in the passing game. So it's actually a plus number if you take most rushing yards, and he might win it with like 44 yards.
So Alan likes the bet if you're betting Joe Mixon as the leading rusher in the game because he pointed out that the Kansas City backs probably aren't going to run that much. McKinnon's going to be a receiving threat, whereas Mixon clearly is going to lead his team in rushing. We just have to hope Patrick Mahomes doesn't make a 70-yard run, but I think Alan's spot on there. It's a great call.
Right. If it's a broken run with Patrick Mahomes for 50 years, then yes. But if you're betting, you're not betting for that or projecting that. As we know, Mahomes is more of a tactical scrambler.
Yes.
He rushes as needed. And that was one of the questions in the chat. He doesn't proactively run right now.
Yes. So Alan, it's a great bet. Now in the playoffs, if you look at Patrick Mahomes' numbers, his playoff rushing numbers are significantly higher than in the regular season. At that point, you're less concerned with injury getting lost for a season because every game is a season at that point. And so when something breaks down, he is very willing to run. And we saw that on display in full last week. Now, Tyrann Mathieu is expected to play for the Chiefs. That's a massive boost to their defense. Also, Rashad Fenton, who I believe is their best corner. He missed the last 2 games with a back injury. He's in. So the Chiefs defense projects to be at full strength. They are very good against the slot. I don't see this being a Tyler Boyd game because of that coverage in the slot. L'Jarius Sneed will be there a bit. Even Matthew will take the slot on occasion. C.J. Uzomah is a middling matchup for him. He's been getting targets. If he continues to get targets, he should continue to be productive. Now, Alan, I want to talk about the Chiefs' plan on defense. Do you have any other final thoughts or questions about the Bengals on offense, their side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it's just to confirm. You agree, though, that they're not going to let Jamar Chase beat them today?
No, Alan asked, are they not going to let Jamar Chase beat them? No. And this is where I'm going to follow up, Alan, and I'm going to go over what I believe the Chiefs' game plan and defense is going to be. So they have gotten strong efforts, I mentioned earlier. Frank Clark on one end, Melvin Ingram on the other. It forces it forces the offenses to respect them across the line. So teams cannot slide help on the interior to stop the game record, Chris Jones. He has help, which he hasn't always had. And I mentioned earlier, if Jeffrey Simmons was able to wreck them, Chris Jones, to me, is an extremely better player. So I think this is great. Now, Steve Spagnol, the defensive coordinator, we know he loves dialing up the blitz. That's his MO. However, in this game, we have to understand that if you blitz Joe Burrow, you typically pay. He's very good at his hot reads, the quick read when the blitz comes. So Joe Burrow is not a guy you want to blitz. And I believe with the pressure they should get with their front four, I do not think Spagnolo is going to blitz other than times when they think it's going to be unexpected and they have a tactical advantage. Other than that, we did mention Jamar Chase. The Chiefs are going to play a lot of two safeties high, keep things in front of them. And also, they probably get somebody to press Chase underneath to keep those screens that turn into 40-yard gains. So, no, they're going to bracket him. They won't shut him down. He's Jamar Chase, but I don't see an eruption game here. Alan, any other comments there?
I was actually answering a few of the questions in the chat, but I think you covered that there. I don't know if you have a specific order you want to talk around, because I see some questions piling up in the chat.
Let's address them. We'll just address them here.
Yeah, but here, I can kind of just summarize it.
Yes.
One of the questions, and I like this one from Julia. She was asking about the prop where you take the 49, or so you take the Rams -10. Do you think that it's going to be a blowout? And what I told her was that I would like to hear your take on that game ATS, but I like the 49ers to win outright. And then she asked why. I gave my reasons, including what you told me last week about the Niners coaching advantage and them owning the Rams the last 3 years.
Yeah, so Alan points out about prop betting here, or just regular betting, and what we like in terms of the Rams game. And we'll get to each side of the football. We're still going to get to the Chiefs side. We'll get to the other game. But here's what Alan was talking about, a teaser in there where somebody gets an extra 6 points. And the teaser bet I love. It's -120 on the odds. I like San Francisco plus 9.5 and KC -1. It's -120. All the Chiefs have to do is win. And the Niners are getting 9.5 points. That teaser bet is phenomenal.
Yeah, they go through some key numbers, but can you talk about you mentioned it very casually when we were on SiriusXM, but that coaching advantage, and why do you think the Niners have owned the Rams the last 3 years, and why is that affecting the spread? Why is it only 3.5? So
Alan asked about the coaching advantage that Kyle Shanahan has over Sean McVay. So first of all, they coach together, and anything that Sean McVay has done nothing technically new since he took that job over. Everything he does pretty much sticks within that system. There are times where they went to use 2 tight ends, but none of the fundamental principles of that offense has changed. Well, Kyle Shanahan doesn't just know what they're doing. He knows why they're doing it. And therefore, when he coaches against McVay, he understands the intricacies of the offense. And you could tell there are times when Fred Warner has played them, and he has let a player run right by him before the pass was thrown, because he knew through his coaching from Kyle Shanahan where the ball was going. And so they understand them intricately, and they have won every type of way. They were trailing big, the 49ers were, and they beat the Rams in week 18. They blew them out in week 10. So it's that, first of all, Shanahan's a better coach. Second of all, he just knows what McVay is going to do because of their time together before they got these head coaching jobs.
He's got that little big brother, little brother thing going on too, right?
The big brother, little brother thing. Absolutely, Alan. That is absolutely true.
I think Shanahan's only about like 5 or 6 years older than him, but
not much older at all. So were there any other questions I missed from the chat?
Yeah. So the other one was okay. So by the way, do you hold your pick to the end, or can you make your pick on either of these games?
I'll make them. I can make them now. It's fine.
Okay.
Want me to make them
So
now?
since we're talking about the Rams and the Niners game, I know we're a little bit like potpourri all over the place here, but people come in and out of these streams, so it's
Yes.
so it's right now. It's the Rams are 3.5 point favorites at home. Who do you like against the spread?
So getting 3.5 points is massive for the 49ers here. I do believe getting those 3.5 points is very important. I think if they played this game 10 times, I honestly believe both teams would win 5. And that's even with the 49ers having won 6 straight. I believe the Rams have more talent. 49ers are better coached. They play within their system better. And I do believe that every game is going to be dependent on breaks that happen, the interception, the fumble, the things that we don't predict well. So that's why I like the 3.5 points here. If pressed to pick the winner, I am picking the Rams because I believe right now Matthew Stafford has played 2 clean games in a row. I don't know that he's had 2 games with no interceptions in a row all year, but nonetheless, I said before the playoffs started, if Matthew Stafford comes in the playoffs playing well, good luck beating them. So right now, Noken Sports News, hey, welcome. And as you guys are listening on Instagram, Alan Zaslowski is on the Twitter, YouTube, so I'm relaying some comments as we go. So there might be a little lag, but we're getting all the information out. Yeah. So I do advocate plus 3.5, Alan.
Hey, Jim, you were talking about Stafford. I just don't like the way, and Chris Liss pointed this out on the video I did with him. I do not like the way the Rams closed that game. That does not bode well for my confidence in them. Can you talk about that collapse and how it might affect this game, if at all?
This is a huge talking point. So we're talking about the Rams game. And we're talking about not only why the Rams didn't close out the Buccaneers, but why they barely beat the Ravens. They had a big lead against the 49ers in week 18 and lost. And here's what happened. Sean McVay found a new toy, their running game. About week 14, 13, he became enamored at the time with Sony Michel and the running game. He ran to a fault. Now, he may have run because Stafford was struggling, but they had week 17. They played the Ravens. The Ravens shut down the run, terrible against the pass. They almost lost that game. They needed a last-minute score to squeak out a low-scoring game because he ran the ball against a team that could stop the run all day. Against the 49ers in week 18, first half, 15 carries, 14 yards. They couldn't run the ball, and he kept running. He ran it in the second half as well. Not as much, and they got closer to 3 yards a carry. And then last week, it was the worst. Big lead against the Bucs, 27-3. Everybody knew he was going to run the ball, and they were not going to have success because the Bucs knew they were going to run the ball. Unless Sean McVay wakes up and says, you know what? Against a team that could stuff the run, we cannot run with the lead. We have to pass to maintain the lead. If he doesn't have that comeuppance moment and figure that out, they are always at risk of blowing a lead. Does that make sense, Alan?
Absolutely. And why do you think that they are like proactively trying to get Cam Akers the ball? Sony Michel has been perfectly fine all year. What do you think this thing is where them, and also talk about if there's an early fumble, what might happen?
So Cam Akers to Sony Michel, Cam Akers is a superior runner. And so first of all, that's the most important thing. And I know his numbers haven't been there. And I know there were fumbles last week. One, he almost fell on his head. And I think out of nervousness of smacking his head, I think he lost the ball. The other one, great play by Sue. I get it. But even in that Arizona game, his numbers were okay. He had 2 big runs called back by penalty. He had a second 40-yard reception. He had one at one point. And what happened was that ball was thrown on his hip behind him. Cam Akers is way more explosive than Sony Michel. Sony Michel had some favorable situations and matchups he took advantage of. Cam Akers has a legitimate chance of making something out of nothing, although he hasn't done much of that yet. But with each game he plays, he's clearly going to get better because he could not have been in game shape. He's got to be closer to that now after 2.5 games played.
Do you agree, though, that if there is a first half fumble, I mean, you can't help it. It's the psychology of that. If he's fumbled twice to close out the game against the Bucs, and if he does have one that goes the wrong way early on, that could mean an early benching for him.
So Alan worries or has fair concerns about whether if Cam Akers fumbles in the first half and he gets benched. Certainly that could happen. Now, I don't think Cam Akers is a fumbler. I think, again, the one play, as I said earlier, he was about to get fouled directly on top of his head, and I think to protect himself, he flinched. And then he got stripped on the other one, and it happens. So I don't think he's a fumbler. And so I think that's important to understand. But yes, if he does fumble, that could be problematic. And maybe that would benefit the Rams. Maybe he would be more likely to throw the ball than to run Sony Michel, because if Cam Akers has little chance to run the ball against the 49ers, Cam Akers has less. Alan, I think we have nobody left on Insta, so I'm going to close that out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's fine by me. Tell them to come over to YouTube.
Come over to YouTube, RotoWire page. Guys, we're going to close this up right now. Get that set there.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, you can just leave it on if you want. It doesn't matter, but it's up to you.
Yeah, I just did. So we're good there. So we can kind of focus our energy here, and we know everybody hears everything.
Yeah, I could tell. I've sensed a little frantic energy from you there, trying to keep it all up. But you did a great job, Jim. You did a great job. All right. So the Cam Akers prop that on the Giving Props podcast that I thought was interesting was most rushing yards for the entire playoffs. He's about 46 yards behind Elijah Mitchell right now. Take a guess what the expected value, or not the expected, the number is on that. You're getting plus what? So Cam Akers would have to finish the playoffs with the most rushing yards. Right now, he's 46 yards behind Elijah Mitchell. So
plus
obviously,
240?
It's plus 425.
425.
I would have guessed 250, just like you did. That seems like a smash. It's on DraftKings right now if you're able to do it.
Wow. If you're picking the Rams to win, that's a definite bet you need to make.
Right, because think about this. If they get into – go ahead. If they go against the Chiefs, presumably.
Either way, the other team is going to be able to run on them. The Rams are going to stuff Edwards-Helaire or Mixon.
Yeah, I guess the thought is that if they do go in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, that they abandon the run early. I don't know, but either way, plus 425 seems way out of whack. I want to give the Given Props podcast some props for bringing that to my attention. I am hitting that one today.
So were there any other questions? Randy, welcome aboard, man. I'm glad you're here. I haven't talked in a bit, so glad to see you.
This one's a little bit more obscure, but I guess this is a DFS play. Scott wants to know about Jalon Jennings and his prospects today.
So Jalon Jennings went off against the Rams in that Week 18 matchup. It was like 4 for 94 and 2 touchdowns. One of those touchdowns came on a trick play where Deebo Samuel threw him the ball. Imagine that Deebo Samuel involved in the offense in a non-traditional way, right? Imagine that. But all right, what we got to look at here is Jennings has failed to hit 30 yards in 5 of his other 6 games besides that eruption against the Rams. He's a great blocking wide receiver. They love him in that capacity. So that's one thing to know. Second thing is, I believe in this game, and I haven't really broken that side of that game down. I believe what the Rams are going to do is I believe they are going to try to push Jimmy Garoppolo to throw the ball to the outside, because Garoppolo does best in the middle of the field. That's where the 49ers like to run their offense. So I think Jennings has a chance to do something here, because if they're compressing the middle of the field, and aside from Jalen Ramsey, who I think is going to be a full-time slot today to just jam the middle up, I think that Jennings could see a few targets. Now, as to what he does with them, that's another story. But he has good cornerback matchups, and assuming Jimmy G can get him the ball, and that's always part of the problem. So Jennings could beat that 25-yard, I think it's 25.5-yard prop. I think he could beat that, but I think it's a risky one. I think a lot of these props are risky because there are just too many scenarios. I like one where I say 7 out of 10 times this probably hits. I mean, that's the 50-50 ones. Those are negative EV. I believe they're negative value.
All right. Julia seems to be passionate about the Rams today, so you may want to talk about that. Do you think that, would you call Sony and Akers a thunder and lightning? Is that, I did not, I just think of them as kind of the same player. I guess Akers is a little bit more dynamic when healthy, but what do you think? And then talk about how that will affect next year. Are these two guys, are they going to be in a shared backfield moving forward?
Well, so it's a great question, Julia. So we saw last year down the stretch when Cam Akers was healthy, they were giving him like 25 touches a game. They want him to be the foundation of their offense. They believe he can do it as a runner, as a receiver, a big play guy. And when you have a player who can be dynamic in both phases of the game, You're not tipping your offense when he's on the field. Look, we know Sony Michel can catch generic screens. We get that. But when he's on the field, if they have other options, if they have other players and it's him on the field, the defense is going to say, oh, they're probably running here. They're not looking to necessarily pass. The probability goes up. Cam Akers on the field, it flips that because you don't know what they're going to do. And so I think that's what we're talking about here. I think that's why Cam Akers was supposed to be their lead back. He will continue to be their lead back. I don't know what Sony Michel's contract is. I know they traded over to get him from.
They're going to have to re-sign him. I'll look it up, but I believe that this was it. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year.
I don't see them bringing him back. I do not.
Oh, you don't? Interesting. So
if they have Darrell Henderson still, Darrell Henderson, they're happy with. Henderson was very good this year until he got hurt. And so, but I think like Julia kind of asked to a degree, and I think you intimated, Alan, Akers is way better, but they're a little bit redundant. Mm-hmm. They do some of the same things. You want somebody as a change of pace who's drastically different. And Darrell Henderson is just kind of an explosive guy. I think that's when you want to have a second back. That's typically what you want with that.
Yeah, so I just looked it up on Sport Track. Sony is a UFA. He's going to be out there. So he's an interesting player to think about for next year, and we won't deviate too far away from these games. But he's either going to sap the fantasy value and of another running back, or he can. I mean, maybe if the Rams win it, they could do that Tampa Bay thing where they bring back Odell Beckham and they bring back Sony Michel. Like, try to they've proven that they'll put it on the credit card.
They absolutely will. So you got to see what they do this year. But I think in terms of a running back, and I think they learned their lesson from Todd Gurley. They may still be paying Gurley for all I know that contract they gave him. I think
true,
right? I think they had to learn, Alan. There's no way they didn't learn from that. I don't see them paying extra money that they don't have to a running back who you could pick up 20 of those along the line. You just pick
there'll be James Conner is available. Melvin Gordon will likely be available. But all those veteran running backs are one-year rentals at this point. When you hit that second contract, if you're not Zeke Elliott, if you're not Dalvin Cook, if you're not Joe Mixon, you're basically a one-year rental from here on out.
Yes, 100%. Are there other questions that we needed to get with?
Yeah. So here's another one. It's Kelsey's prop for 72.5 yards today. Talk about if you think that is a reasonable bet, and actually tie that into the total, because my best bet of the day is under 54.5 points. Start with the Kelsey 72.5 yards prop.
So Kelsey did not have a good game in the first matchup, but remember, he was just activated from COVID a couple days prior. He was not nearly 100% in that game. So that's very important to understand. We're doing box score hunting. We're going to see 5 for 25 and a touchdown on 7 targets. Not good. Well, the problem is here that the Chiefs have gotten very creative. Now, normally the Chiefs would love that where they call it a 3-by-1 offensive set. 3 receivers on one side, often Kelsey on the other side. Kelsey would often draw a top cornerback there. What they're doing recently is they're moving Kelsey to the side with 3 players and kind of putting him in the middle of that stack. And what it's doing is it's allowing him free release. It's allowing anybody from pressing him, and it allows him to quickly get into the zone and find open space. So I think with the Super Bowl on the line, and as we saw last week, I believe the Chiefs are going to focus on their superstars here. I believe they're going to focus on Tyreek. They're going to focus on Kelsey. They're good because they've been spreading the ball around otherwise. I think it's going to start with them, and the other players will piggyback off of that. So I do think Kelsey is going to have a big yardage game because the Bengals are a bottom 10 team in defending the tight end. Like I said, they had success in that first match, but Kelsey was not right from COVID.
Another question for you there is with this total. So, the 54.5. I think that's a little bit inflated based on what we saw last week. 1, do you agree? And 2, how do you see this game going as far as the scoring is concerned?
So, Alan, I completely see the case for people that like the under on this. I know that the Chiefs have scored 40 points in 2 straight games, and I'm not saying this because they've scored 42 straight games. They're scoring 40 today. They're going over 40 on their own. Because what are the Bengals going to do to slow them down? Oh, and I pointed out at the very beginning of the show, if you missed it, in the last matchup, left tackle Orlando Brown injured his calf in pregames. Right tackle Lucas Niang, 6 snaps into the game, lost to a season-ending knee injury. Their line is fine right now. Trey Hendrickson is the one guy that can bring pressure. He's not a varied pass rusher. He's a bull rusher. Orlando Brown, that's perfect for him. Orlando Brown holds up against that kind of guy. The guy with the arsenal of moves, much more difficult for him. Hendricks is the ringleader of the pass rush, and you can't blitz Mahomes. They're not blitzing him. The Bengals play that too high shell. We've seen that all season for the Chiefs. However, they lack the type of speed to keep up with Hill, Harmon, Pringle, and Jerick McKinnon. Remember, this Chiefs team that was compromised with COVID returnees scored on 4 touchdowns on 4 straight possessions in the first half in that first meeting. They are going to be able to score at will. I don't see a world where they can get slowed down. So that's my take on how I view the Chiefs side of the over thing.
You mentioned McKinnon. So we do have a McKinnon question, and we're going to get to everybody's question. But this McKinnon question is about his receiving prop, 35.5 yards. Talk about what you just mentioned with the offense, and this number feels a little high to me. What do you think about 35.5?
It's a very aggressive prop number. I like McKinnon very much. At 35.5 yards, you're going to need probably 4 catches. Because as much as we know he's explosive and he can make a big play at any time, we can't bank on that. The probability is if he gets 4 catches, he gets you right around that 35 yards. Because one of those catches could go for 2 yards. One could go for 8.
One could be a negative. One could be a negative, because McKinnon's a guy that will run backwards to try to run forwards again.
Yeah, so and I hadn't seen that prop unless somebody got it on somewhere besides DraftKings. DraftKings didn't have one even this morning, but that is a very smartly placed number. It's one that I think the probability that they're trying to sucker people in on this one because people are getting enamored with the Jerick McKinnon hype. I think there are too many scenarios he misses that, but there's certainly a way he can hit it, and I think it's just too much of a gamble. I think with prop bets, again, I was saying earlier, we bet the ones that we think the majority of time they come in, but if there is so much uncertainty in the range of outcomes, it's really just throwing a dart and hoping to get lucky, and we don't like to just try to get lucky when we're doing our gambling.
And as you get towards these Final Four and your Super Bowl, the value gets squeezed out of the overs because nobody likes to bet unders, Jim. As you know that nobody roots for punts.
Correct.
Nobody roots for interceptions. I think that just as a general rule, obviously every prop has got its own merits, but just remember overs are generally not going to have as much value, especially as you get casual bettors coming online.
Yes. At this point, I know we talked about the Bengals on offense. We didn't really talk about the Chiefs, but we kind of wove that into our discussion. So I don't think there's a lot I want to add, but I think the McKinnon factor needs to be talked about. The fact that he played 78 and 70% of the snaps in the last 2 weeks with Edwards-Helaire healthy last week. McKinnon is their back in the playoffs. They would not want him to be their back for 16 weeks because he would wear out. But for the playoffs, playoffs.
Very good. It automatic, right? It's
automatic.
It's like a trigger. You have to. It's almost like a tick. You have to say it. Yeah.
How awesome! So McKinnon gives them a speed dynamic to further stretch the defense. Edwards-Helaire has been, good with the run blocking he gets. He takes advantage of that, and he'll be used on occasion. I said earlier, Darrell Williams, if something's there, he'll get it. Jerick McKinnon puts a stress on the defense that neither of them put. And I think that's a very good situation for Patrick Mahomes. It opens up even more of the field as if they needed that. And so McKinnon is a very good wild card here. And I mentioned earlier the team speed. In a general sense, the Bengals are fine with team speed, but they're not fine with team speed against this fast of a team. Now, the Bengals defense, as to how they're going to approach this game, I don't think they're getting pressure with their front four. I mentioned earlier, Orlando Brown matches up extremely well with Trey Hendrickson. But if they blitz, they can't compromise their secondary. A, Mahomes will break, contain, and run. B, you leave one less defender to deal with Tyreek Hill and the boys, and that's not a good matchup. So I think they're in a lot of trouble. They're going to play their too high. They're going to force the Chiefs to, as Alan said, matriculate the ball down the field in the hopes that they get an interception, a fumble, a tipped pass, a sack, something to break a drive down. That has to be their approach. If they go aggressive, that aggression is going to backfire on them.
Couple weeks A couple weeks ago, Jeff. Oh yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off there,
No,
but I don't want
done.
you. I don't want to get you away from the Chiefs' offense. A player you haven't mentioned today that you've mentioned to me, I think it was offline. It was definitely, maybe it was on the radio show. Is Byron Pringle and the trust the Chiefs have in him? There's going to be DFS players that are thinking about using him today. Is that a good idea?
So Byron Pringle, he has like 5 catches in 3 straight games. He scored 3 touchdowns in his last 2. In the last 8 games, his yardage has been all over the board, low at 29, high at 75. You're not going to get likely a big yardage game, but you'll get some receptions. You have a chance at a touchdown. He has been used in the red zone. So he does have a chance here. And I think a lot of people who haven't watched the games all season, I think a lot of people still believe Mecole Hardman is the number 2. He hasn't been that for a long time. Pringle has been the clear starting receiver on that team with Tyreek Hill. But when I hear people talk, they're bringing up Hardman's name first. That's not accurate. And I think that makes Pringle an even better play because, you think there's more people that know this stuff, but from what I hear, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, it's funny, like, because that ship has sailed for most people that are in it, like everyone watching this show. I mean, anyone watching this stream is a sharp, smart fantasy football player, DFS player, prop better. All right, let's get it. So, a general question is, any good recommendations today? You know what? Before we get into Randy's question, and we'll give you one right here. The Cooper Kupp prop is set pretty high. It's 100.5 yards, and I want you to talk about that prop. But also, I saw an interesting prop: Cooper Kupp most receiving yards today. So all 4 teams minus 120. So talk about Cooper Kupp's 100.5 yard prop. And do you think he could lead all pass catchers in all games today?
I mean, it's nearly impossible to bet against Cooper Kupp, right? On the entire season, he's got like 5 games where he hasn't hit 100 yards. I'm counting right now. 6 games that he hasn't hit 100 yards. So including the playoffs, it's 18 games or 19 games, and he's hit it all but a couple. So to me, the probability is that he goes over that total. He had 122 in week 10 against the Niners. He came back in week 17 or 18, I should say, with 118. He hasn't beaten it by much, but he's done it twice straight, majority of his games. What do you think, Alan?
I think that they juiced that a little too much. I mean, they're getting cute now because I think last week it was it was like 92. The prop, and they've just squeezed all the value out of it. Now, will he probably do it? Yes, but it could be 100, it could be 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's going to be close. I would say, I don't know what the juice is on that. I mean, if you want to have some fun, you never want to bet against Cooper Kupp. It's not a fun bet. I just think it's a stay away, but I do like the bet. Minus 120 of Cooper Kupp most receiving yards on the day. Who do you think is the biggest threat to him in that category? Who could have more receiving yards than Cooper Kupp?
T. Higgins. Boom. T. Higgins. Because I think Chase is going to be held over the top. And we said, I know Baltimore is a terrible pass defense. He went for 194 against them. This is a far better defense that he's facing. I think the level of attention that Chase is going to see is going to T. Higgins can make big plays. A lot of it after the catch, but he also can beat you down the sideline. So I think T. Higgins, there is a world where I believe he can go for 130, 140 yards.
Yeah, what I'm doing right now is I'm actually looking to see most receiving yards on the day. Is this for? Oh, it's for the conference. Yeah, it's actually Cooper Kupp is plus 225. I'm going to see. I'm trying to read this properly here. Most receiving yards on Championship Sunday. Yeah, so if you want to take Cooper Kupp at plus 225, I don't think that's terrible. T. Higgins, though. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's most receiving yards on the weekend. I mean, I thought that was minus 120.
What's T. Higgins' number on that?
I'm looking right now, plus 850.
Oh man, I gotta find a way to bet that one. I'm gonna have to bet that one for sure.
That's on DraftKings right now, plus 850. Now remember, that includes all 4 games.
Yeah,
I mean all 4 teams, all 4.
Right,
teams.
No, I get what you mean. Yep. Yeah. Oh my gosh. You know what? At those odds, I think that there's such a good possibility that T. Higgins does that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to make that bet today. So that's a great thing. What other questions do we have?
Okay, so going to the questions here. Here we go. Here's one. It says, let me just put it up on the screen. Beckham is making Baker look silly. Obviously, Beckham is thriving without Baker Mayfield. Cleveland should learn and move on this offseason. So I guess the question is, with Beckham's emergence and now is back to a relevant player in the NFL, would you say, talk about the Cleveland situation, and do you think This being, well, remember, Baker Mayfield's under contract for one more year, but what do you think the Cleveland Browns should do? This is kind of a tangent off of Super Sunday here, but it's okay. I don't mind. I like these type of questions.
So the problem they have is that whole Cleveland Browns team is constructed around a rookie contract at quarterback. They paid a lot of players a lot of money because they could afford it with Baker Mayfield. If you bring in a veteran quarterback who you have to pay a salary, all of a sudden, a lot of those pieces that you paid money to, you've got to figure something out. And that's not going to be easy because they're going to compromise their team for years. To bring in a one-year rental, which is all that a Rodgers would be, and, Russell Wilson, what is he at this point? So, honestly, it's almost as if they kind of have to keep Baker and just figure something out because realistically, they're in that position with money. That's the biggest indicator. And it's not like this New Orleans Saints thing where they can, just keep cutting their infrastructure, their team, keep a few stars around. The Browns aren't going to be able to do that. If the Browns cut their infrastructure, we're cutting offensive linemen that make that engine run. That's a run-based offense. And that's the problem I see.
Yeah, back to the games today. George Kittle, this is one of the questions from the chat. George Kittle hasn't had big games against the Rams this year. Do you think that that's a trend, or are they going to have to really force feed Kittle to make, because presumably the Rams are going to have a game plan for Debo, right?
Well, it's very tough to game plan for Debo because you don't know where you're going to find him. If you line him up on the outside and you put Jalen Ramsey on him, okay, we're going to walk Debo in motion and put him behind the quarterback as a running back. Now you just lost Jalen Ramsey for the play, right? So because of the versatility he brings, game planning for him is nearly impossible. Shanahan has found a chess piece that there's no answer for. They'll run him between the tackles. So George Kittle in this game, overall, the matchup, it's a tough one. Rams are top 7 against tight ends and DVOA. They don't give up a lot. So the games Kittle had, those are pretty much in line. Now, one thing I will tell people to look for, we know the strong safeties on the injured reserve. I believe it's Jordan Fuller. He was their signal caller. Taylor Rapp, the free safety, has missed the last 2 games with a concussion. He only practiced in limited fashion this week. If Taylor Rapp is out, puts them down another safety, that elevates Kittle's probability for doing well. Now, I also mentioned that I think the Rams' game plan is to force Jimmy G to throw to the outside where he doesn't want to throw. And if they're loading up the middle of the field, that makes it even more difficult for Kittle. Now, I like Kittle as a contrarian play in DFS.
I want to ask you about that because this week, Jeff Erickson, I was talking with him on one of our videos about the $5,300 DraftKings price on Kittle. And I'm with you. And I want you to finish that thought, but he doesn't want Kittle in any of his lineups. He likes Tyler Higbee at 3,700 as an alternate play because he thinks that Higbee's going to outscore Kittle outright.
He could. But remember, if you're talking a DFS tournament with hundreds of thousands of people, maybe, you need the player that can have the crazy upside. Higbee makes sense if that's the route you want to go.
Doesn't have the upside of Kittle, though. He does not have the 50 fantasy point upside.
No, and that's the point. George Kittle at any point can take any catch to the house. They're on their own 10-yard line. He could take it 90 yards to the house. When you're in a tournament, that's the field flipping upside you're looking for. Tyler Higbee scored 2 touchdowns against the 49ers last time they played. He definitely did. He scored 1 in the other game as well. His yardage wasn't very good in that first game. You can make the case for Higbee if you want to get to more money to afford another player at another position that has more upside. But honestly, to me, the play is fade Kelsey, put in Kittle, because like Alan said, that 40, 50-point upside that you're never getting with Tyler Higbee.
Give me a star player, an expensive player that you think the sharp DFS players are going to fade, that you could be a square and pay up for this player. Who do you think is a good star to pay up for in DFS this week?
I think Tyreek Hill is that player because I think the lack of high-end speed on that Cincinnati defense, I think last week, they know what Tyreek Hill is clearly, but they unlocked something last week. Getting him to the edge the way they did on that 65-yard touchdown, I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And I think against this defense, he can make more similar plays. So and Hill's had a lot of bad games. So I think a lot of the sharps, they know the upside.
There was I'm sorry, Jim.
Yeah, no.
I didn't thought you were done. I'm looking at a sheet to ask you the next question.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask you about scrubby tight ends here. And when I say scrubby, of course, CJ Uzomah has had like a 7-target floor the last few weeks. Is he viable this week? Because I don't like Higbee at all. I don't think that's the key to the Rams winning this week. If you're going to pay down a little bit, is Uzomah the guy?
Well, yes. At that point, it's money. And Uzomah has comparable potential upside to Higbee. So that would be the way to go, because save more money, get the similar upside, and then go elsewhere. I think a lot of people fade Uzomah, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I like him. I think that he's been a bigger part of the game plan than Tyler Boyd has. I mean, I've heard some Tyler Boyd has to rebound this week, that he's been disappointing. I don't think so. They haven't been using him at all. I mean, of course it could happen. He's a good player. Free agent next year, I believe, right? Tyler Boyd. It'd be interesting. Sure. I have to take a look at that one as we're talking next. But the other one I wanted to ask you about, and this is going down the list, but Blanton, he scored a touchdown last week, or if I remember, is he somebody that Kendall Blanton is the backup tight end on the Rams? Is he somebody that is he just like basically throwing a dart, or is that just not even worth using to really load up your lineup?
Alan, I don't think it's worth using, because you might get one catch out of him. If that catches a touchdown, you get 8-9 points, and that's your upside. That's all the upside you have. The downside, if they played a game 10 times, 7 of those games he gets a 0. So I think that's why in a tournament, he doesn't have any upside, any tangible upside. So I think even at 2,500 or whatever he costs, I just don't think it's worth it.
And I asked that question only because there are going to be box score readers that see that and say, hey, if I do that, I can afford a triple, because we had a question about a triple Kansas City stack. And if you're playing the whole slate, obviously if you're playing the showdown, you can't do it. But if you're playing the 2-game slate, you can probably afford Mahomes, Tyreek, and Kelsey that way, but it may not be optimal because you're likely going to take a 0 there. Yes. As we push up against the hour, Jim, you never gave us your pick in the Kansas City Cincinnati game against the spread. Right now it's 7 even. There's a little juice, I think, on the Kansas City side, but it depends on which book you're at. It's basically minus 110 though.
So when I give this game, I do try to give a little bit of a preface on it. So look, all right, the last time they played, the game was close. I mentioned earlier, KC blew a big lead. They were dealing with significant offensive line, last-minute injuries, COVID outbreak. If Andy Reid coaches this aggressively, they should score at will here. Defensively, I think they're going to get a lot of pressure at Burrow without blitzing. They're going to slow Chase down. Here's one more thing before I give the prediction. Think back through these 2 games. They've kicked a lot of field goals, the Bengals have. The Bengals have kicked field goals against the Raiders, who are the worst in the red zone in the league in touchdown percentage. Field goals. You can't do that against the Chiefs. Yeah. Is there a chance Andy Reid takes his foot off the gas, which he does, has them blow a big lead for a backdoor cover? Yes, that does exist. I see blowout here.
Give me a score prediction.
41-23. I've got 41-23.
Yeah, and then give me a score prediction on the other side. I know that game, we wouldn't be surprised if either team won, but give me your best shot at a Rams 49ers final score.
Yes, 27-24 Rams. And I do say if they play it 10 times, each wins 5. Taking the Rams 27-24. So take the 3.5 points.
Very good. I like that. All right, so we're pushing up on the hour here. Do you usually go for an hour on these streams, Jim?
An hour, but if there's questions, I'll take them. If there's comments, I'll take them.
Here we go. Then there's a question about Van Jefferson. I love the deep dives. Van Jefferson kind of got usurped a little bit. His fantasy value, his DFS value, as soon as Odell Beckham came alive again, I feel bad for Van Jefferson. I love him as a player, but Julia asked about Van Jefferson's how much playing time, snap percentage he's going to get. Is he a little bit of a sneaky DFS play, or is he just not part of a projectable part of the game plan right now?
Well, he's been dealing on and off with a bit of a knee injury. We don't know how significant it was. I mean, he had 63 snaps last week, so that was good. But in the prior weeks, he had a 37, a 44, and a 30. So I think he's been managing that knee. Now, he played all those snaps last week, so that makes him viable. He's an occasional downfield target, and so that definitely can work that way. So I clearly think you can utilize him that way. As to how many targets he gets, if they're going to run the ball like they've been running it, there's not a lot to go around. It's like Kupp gets his double digits or close to it. Beckham gets 5 or 6. And then the rest of it's that potpourri. And you got Higbee. Higbee's getting targets. So I just think it's been a target squeeze for Jefferson.
All right. I mean, it's a little bit of a cliche. Sorry to dog you like this, Scott, but he had asked, who are your locks for DFS? Obviously, we know there's no such thing as a lock, but there's two ways to answer it. Who you paying up for and who are your values? I already asked you who you're paying up for. You told me Tyreek Hill. T. Higgins, a little bit of a value. Is there anyone at the bottom feeder? I mean, we wouldn't call those locks, but who are your bottom feeders that you're trying to squeeze in the lineup to get maybe Tyreek Hill and a Jamar Chase?
Yeah, the guy I want to sneak in there is Odell Beckham because
that's a good one. That's
a
good one. Yeah.
I think to beat the 49ers, they're going to want to put Kupp and Beckham on the same side of the field and run what we call these high lows, where you compromise the safety. The safety commits to one, you throw to the other. The first full game Beckham played with them, the Rams did this. Kupp was on the inside, Beckham was on the outside. They both were running their routes. As they ran their routes, the safety made a nano step toward Kupp to come in. The second Stafford saw him pause. Ball went over the top. Beckham behind the defense, touchdown. They can set the Rams up on plays like this, and Beckham is still capable of big plays. I like Beckham as he is a contrarian play. People aren't playing Beckham.
That's a sharp play because we know that Odell Beckham, fine, he may not be peak Odell Beckham from the Giants, but he still has the ability. He's one of the top 15 yak guys. If he catches one of those slants, he can go, and certainly we know that he can do it downfield. All right, if you like this video today, I want you to help us out. Just click the like button. You've done great about leaving comments, and if you're not already subscribed to the RotoWire YouTube channel, go ahead over there. We put up tons of free videos every week from Jim Coventry, from Chris Liss, from Jeff Erickson. So make sure you subscribe to the RotoWire YouTube page. And if you want to check out all of RotoWire's premium content, premium all sports, so not just football when football ends. We love football, Jim. We could do football. We're going to be doing football all year round. But our baseball draft kits up, our basketball mid-season redraft rankings are up there. Just go to rotowire.com/try. 10 days free. There's no credit card to put in, nothing to cancel. And also, so I want you, if you're not already following Jim on Twitter, I don't know what's wrong with you. He's literally one of the best follows for football information at Jim Coventry NFL, JimCoventry NFL. I want you to go over there. And if you'd like, you could also go to my Twitter, which we'll link it in the video description below, at Alan Seslowski. And the last thing, and then I want you to have the final word here, Jim, is if you love year-round fantasy football, we're RotoWire. We now have a Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast. Go to the RotoWire Fantasy Football podcast feed. Click subscribe, it's free. And every Monday and Thursday, we're going to have new episodes of fantasy football talk, DFS talk, all year round. We're going to talk coaching carousel. And Jim, we're going to have you on, and I think in 3 weeks, we're going to finalize that date on the Fantasy Football Podcast. I have 3 guests booked out for that, but you're going to be right after there. I was hoping to catch you once school's over, but we need to get you on before that.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
All right. So, we're getting complimented all over the place. We love those. As many compliments as you want. That's no problem. All right. Some final thoughts on these games for some of the people. I see new people jumping in the stream. So give me on each team. We're going to start with the San Francisco 49ers. What do they need to do? What's the key for them to pull the upset today?
Yes. So for the 49ers to win, there's 2 things. Offensively, Kyle Shanahan needs to manipulate and win in the middle of the field. I said the Rams are going to try to take away the middle from him. He still has to operate there. If Jimmy Garoppolo is thrown to the outsides, we're going to see a pick 6. We're going to see an interception. It's going to be a problem. So Shanahan's got to be very multiple, and he can do this in his scheming. He's going to have to manipulate the running game and the passing game in the middle of the field where the heat is going to be the most. But maybe get an occasional George Kittle over the top of the defense as well. That's their key.
How about sorry, don't talk defensively. Go ahead.
On defense, it's going to be no bells and whistles. They continue to get pressure with 4. They don't blitz Stafford because it will carve them up. And the other thing is their safeties are going to have to be their big hitting selves today, and they're going to have to put some thoughts in the back of those minds of receivers. That is going to be the way they're going to have to do it.
Okay, let's go to the Rams. If the Rams pull the win off today, how did they do it?
They abandon the run. You can throw on the 49ers.
Not establish the run. They've abandoned the run.
Yes, pretty much abandoned. I literally, they need to go to a 65-35 pass balance. They need to up it to where the Bengals have it at 61%. They need to have the Kansas City type pass attack. And they can't, because the corners are still a liability for the 49ers. And the line of the Rams can hold up to that 4-man rush of the 49ers. They have to be passive. If they get passive, they're in trouble.
And the Rams defense are their stars a factor today? Is it Von Miller? Is it a team effort? How do you see this going if things go right for the Rams on defense?
So Aaron Donald has been a very mild factor in the 2 games against the 49ers. The 49ers have been good at scheming runs away from him, getting protection set. Now understand, Trent Williams, the left tackle's a game time decision for the 49ers. I didn't mention that earlier. But
do you think he's playing? Like, handicap that.
I think he's not 100%. And I think that's going to be a big problem for him. If he didn't practice all week, he is not 100%. We don't know if it's a high ankle. And honestly, if it is, Von Miller on him all day long. And if Williams is, I think he's not 100%. I think they're going to get a lot of pressure. And so that's going to be their goal. Their goal is to keep the 49ers in obvious passing situations. And then without blitzing, there are 3 great defensive linemen. Floyd's not great, but he's a very good pass rusher. But get the heat with those 4 and force Jimmy G to get rid of the ball quickly.
If the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 7-point dogs going into Kansas City today, if they could pull the upset, which I think will be one of the biggest upsets of the last few years. I mean, nobody's expecting the Bengals to win. There is a lot of action on the cover. But what did they do right if they pull the upset today in Kansas City?
They get a couple turnovers. That's the biggest point. They need a couple turnovers. And that would set them in position to do well. And of course, at that point, it's going to be Joe Burrow putting the team on his back and not kicking field goals as they've done in the playoffs at this point and got away with it. It's scoring touchdowns.
And defensively, they're not really one of the top defensive units, but how do they even begin to contain Kansas City from getting that quick 14-point lead?
You play the 2 high shell, which they do. They play the 2 high safeties to keep things underneath, and you make them run 10-play, 12-play drives, as we talked about. But within those 10 to 12 plays, if they make a mistake, a holding call, a drop pass, an interception, a fumble, that's what they have to do. They have to increase the probability for Kansas City to break down on a drive.
Do you think that they also need to pull like a surprise onside kick, fake punt, that type of stuff, or just play it by the book and don't take those type of gambles?
If they fall behind, they'll need to try something. I think they should go into the mindset. Kansas City has had games where they've had turnover issues. Those are highly variable. And so I think you come out and you play it straight because you don't want to give them an easy score. But if you fall a little bit behind, you may want to tip the scales in your favor and take a chance. But I think they come into this game just trying to make those long drives by the Chiefs turn into a mistake.
Let's end with the Kansas City Chiefs. You talked about earlier that you expect a rout, a blowout, where the game's never in doubt. Describe how that goes if everything goes as basically probably most people think is going to be a blowout, unless you're taking the Bengals with the points. So what goes right for the Chiefs when they win today?
Yeah, basically it's just surgical, very little pass rush, that the 4-man rush is not getting home against an excellent top 5 line, and they're just making the quick connections in space, getting the receivers on the move, yardage after the catch, occasionally breaking a long one. Jerick McKinnon, the screen option when pressure comes, but also to loosen up the defense, to worry about chunk gains there. I just think they're the speed, utilizing their speed and emphasizing that in their offensive play calling. I think that is what their narrative is to push them to great heights here.
What's Kansas City's defensive plan going to be? What do you expect them to do? As far, are they going to take away a star? Are they going to, how is the defense going to help complement the offense today for Kansas City?
They will play just like the Bengals. They're going to put 2 safeties up to keep Jamar Chase in front of them. They don't want any 70-yard touchdowns. They want to make the Bengals work for what they get. And I also believe, we mentioned earlier, although Steve Spagnol, the defensive coordinator, loves to blitz, not here. Only strategic and occasional when they don't expect it. But you rush with those 4 Ingram, Clark, and of course Chris Jones against a very bad offensive line. But you drop 7 men into coverage and you make Burrow find spots within that coverage.
Yeah, I'm excited for this game. I hope it's not a blowout,
Me
but
too.
I tend to think with you too that Kansas City is just going to step on the throat, get to that game unscathed. But I do like the under. I don't think it's going to be as high scoring. I could see something like, 35-10. That was my prediction. I didn't give my prediction for the other game. For the other game, I think I do too think it's going to be 27-24. I had the same score, but I have the Niners winning that game outright.
Good.
So I'm taking the Niners money line today. I obviously like it better with the points. And the last question we had before we sign off was, since we were talking about defenses, what do you think Cincinnati's biggest need in the draft is? Is it a defensive linebacker? Do they need, because they're probably going to have a late pick this year, or they're definitely going to have a late pick. So what's going to be available for them, and what do they need in the 22 draft?
I've got my prayer sign to the side. Offensive line, 7 picks on the offensive line, whatever you have to do. 5th round, 1st round, 7th round, offensive line, because Joe Burrow needs to get some protection. He cannot keep playing like this.
That said, I still think Chase was the right pick. I was out there yelling that it was the wrong pick. I wanted them to take Sewell, but I've been proven wrong. Jamar Chase is that special talent, the prototypical receiver. All right, Jim Coventry, you did it again. You crushed it. You gave everyone all the information. You broke down the games with precision. Just really quick, but when are you back on SiriusXM again?
Today in 47 minutes and 2 seconds.
Okay, so what I want everybody to do is you have SiriusXM. You're going to go to channel 87. You listen to Jim on the weekends. He's there. You can get more of this deep analysis. And if you don't have a Sirius subscription, what I tell you to do is go there, get an internet-only subscription for them. I negotiate. They try to get like $14, $15 out of you. I got my internet subscription for Sirius Jim for $4 a month. I just went on there and I was relentless, So you get all that good stuff. Anything else before we go?
No, enjoy the games. There are 3 games left this season. I hope they're not blowouts. Randy, thank you, Randy. Appreciate you, man. And Julia, appreciate you. And Scott, everybody was here. But yeah, that's the most important thing. It was your time, most valuable thing you have. You spent it with us. We appreciate it so much. You'll never know.
All right. We'll see you back next week. We're going to, you're going to do another stream, but even in the dead week, right? Even in the off week.
I think we'll do an early look at the Super Bowl.
Okay.
I think we'll do an early look, and I'll post that up. We'll probably retweet it on RotoWire, Alan. So.
Yeah, but I also think that it would be good next week to do a little bit of a post-mortem on the teams that get eliminated well. So I think that even if it's a 20-minute, half-hour stream, we should come back and at least give the people in that dead week a post-mortem on the eliminated teams.
Well, and if you say I want to come in with me, just tell me when, and we'll make sure that happens. If not, I will, but I'd like to be with you. All
right. Well, we will do it again then next week. We'll let everybody know if we're going to do it we'll probably do it on Sunday, since football is a Sunday type of day. But we'll post that on the Twitter. You follow Jim on Twitter at Jim Coventry NFL. I'm at Alan Sosowski. Until next time, everybody, enjoy football games. Bye-bye.